In our lives, we all have people who are very close to us. Our family, friends, loved ones. These are the most precious people to us. But often when we want them to change in certain ways, we resort to criticism. Our intention, in fact, is to help them see things more clearly or to encourage positive change. However, most of the time, this approach fails. Instead of achieving the result we hoped for, we hurt their feelings. They may become upset with us, and sometimes the relationship cools off. Even when we say, "I'm only doing this for your own good," it rarely mends the damage. This leads us to an important question. Should we criticize those who are close to us at all? And how does Stoic philosophy view criticism? This is exactly what we will explore in this video. If you too would like to walk this Stoic path with us, I encourage you to watch the video until the end. And if you subscribe to the channel and like the video, I would really appreciate it. Now let's dive into the main topic. When we criticize a loved one, our goal is rarely to hurt them. Quite the opposite. We usually want to help them become better. But the problem lies in how we present the criticism and how the other person perceives it. The tone of our voice, the timing we choose, and the words we use, all these factors can completely change the outcome. If we cross this delicate line, no matter how good our intentions are, we may damage the love and respect they have for us. Because every person, especially those closest to us, first and foremost, wants to feel accepted and understood. They want to feel that we love them as they are, not as someone we are trying to mold into a different version of themselves. Criticism, however, often sends the opposite message. The other person begins to think, "They don't accept me as I am. They want me to change. Maybe I'm not good enough." And this thought acts like dust that slowly covers love and warmth. Once, twice, 3 times, with each criticism, the bond becomes a little weaker. Eventually, the relationship grows colder and more distant. What's even more dangerous is that sometimes we are not even aware this is happening. We say our words, we feel relieved, but we fail to notice the marks we leave behind. As a result, the other person starts pulling away. They speak less, share less, and in the end, an invisible wall forms between us. Yes, criticism can lead to conflict and distance. Sometimes without even realizing it, we forget how powerful the ripple effect of criticism can be. We think we're simply expressing an opinion, merely pointing out the right way. But we often overlook one crucial fact. The human heart is not a robot. Every word that touches it can leave a lasting mark. The biggest mistake we make is assuming that criticism will trigger only a logical response. We believe that if we point out someone's mistake, they will simply understand and correct it. But in reality, things rarely work this way. People, especially those closest to us, respond first with emotions, not logic. And criticism often strikes right at those emotions. If criticism is delivered harshly, insensitively, or at the wrong moment, it immediately triggers a defense mechanism. Instead of listening or reflecting on their mistake, the other person begins to defend themselves. This naturally paves the way for conflict. What may start as a small disagreement or exchange of words slowly grows. One day you find that warm conversations have dwindled, and the connection has cooled. An invisible but deeply felt distance forms between two people. That's why the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius warned, "The strongest relationships are built on patience and understanding, not on criticism." Understanding and patience open the heart, while criticism too often causes it to shut down. Sometimes relationships break down completely, not after just 1 or 2 incidents, but through repeated criticism. The other person starts to think, "No matter what I do, I will never be good enough for this person. In their eyes, I'm always wrong." This thought shakes the very foundation of the relationship. When someone feels chronically undervalued, they stop investing energy into the connection. This is how distance begins. First with half-hearted conversations, then with attempts to avoid interaction, and finally with complete silence. In truth, the thing that destroys the relationship is often not the criticism itself, but the feelings it leaves behind: hurt, resentment, and the sense of not being understood. That's why whenever we feel the urge to criticize, we must remember, it is very easy to shatter a warm relationship that has been built over years with a single, harsh remark. But rebuilding that trust and warmth can take years. Of course, when we criticize our loved ones, it is rarely out of bad intent. We want them to be better, to change certain habits, to correct their mistakes. But here lies a subtle and dangerous psychological mechanism, one we are often unaware of. Criticism activates an internal threat signal in the brain. This is a natural defense mechanism. When the other person hears criticism, they immediately think, I'm being blamed. They're trying to force me to change. I need to defend myself. And now, instead of thinking about change, their focus shifts to protecting themselves and justifying their actions. When someone enters defense mode, they completely shut themselves off to new ideas and change. Sometimes, an even deeper psychological reaction takes place. A sense of stubborn resistance emerges. The more they feel criticized, the more pressure they feel, and an inner thought begins to take hold. If I give in to this pressure, I'm betraying my own worth. Even if I'm wrong, I must stand my ground. Instead of fostering change, criticism can now breed stubbornness. At this point, the person is no longer defending a mistake. They are defending their entire sense of identity. Naturally, this affects the relationship. The more we criticize, the less the other person is willing to listen. This is exactly why the Stoics emphasized that true change cannot be forced and it must come from within. Seneca wrote, "You cannot force a person to change, you will only make them run away. One who truly wishes to change will do so voluntarily." And let's not forget what most powerfully inspires change in others. It is a sense of support and acceptance. If a person feels that we accept them as they are, believe in them, and have hope for their growth, then they will naturally find the motivation to improve. Conversely, if they encounter constant criticism in every conversation, they will instinctively want to escape the relationship and protect themselves. Therefore, if we truly want our loved ones to change, we must choose the path of example rather than the path of criticism. Change is not something that can be rushed. It is a process that requires patience and understanding. If we create a safe and supportive space for this process, change will naturally arise from within. So every time we feel the urge to criticize our loved ones, we should first ask ourselves, will these words truly help them grow, or will they only make them more resistant and closed off? Very often, our impulse to criticize comes from a subtle sense of superiority. By pointing out someone's flaws, we momentarily feel wiser, more correct, even superior. But this is, in fact, a subtle game of the ego. We seek comfort by comparing ourselves to others' mistakes, but this is a sign of inner weakness, because the need to feel superior to others is often a way of silencing our own insecurities and fears. But this approach is completely contrary to the spirit of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics teach us that true wisdom begins not by pointing out the flaws of others, but by recognizing and correcting our own weaknesses. As Epictetus said, don't waste your time on the mistakes of others. If you find time to improve yourself, you won't need to look at others at all. When we constantly focus on the shortcomings of others, we are, in fact, trying to cover up our own inner discomfort and divert attention away from our own flaws. The more we criticize others, the further we drift from our own personal growth. Every time we find fault in another person, we should remember that we too may possess similar weaknesses. Marcus Aurelius said it beautifully. When you see another person's fault, search for the seeds of that same fault within yourself. This approach fosters both humility and compassion. It helps us understand that we are not free from mistakes ourselves, and it is unfair to judge someone without fully understanding the experiences and circumstances that shape their behavior. Let's take a simple example from daily life. You see a driver breaking the rules and you immediately criticize them harshly. But pause for a moment. Perhaps that person is rushing to the hospital or is going through an intense personal crisis. What do you truly gain by judging them without knowing the full story? On the contrary, such anger only disrupts your own inner peace. If we want to adopt a Stoic approach in life, we should focus more on our inner world than on judging others. Each time we feel tempted to criticize someone, we should ask ourselves, how can I improve my own behavior in this situation? Moreover, we must remember that everyone grows up in different circumstances, with different abilities and opportunities. The mistakes others make today may be the result of hardships we ourselves have never faced. This mindset fosters both humility and empathy. Epictetus also said, if someone is making a mistake, they are doing so because they believe it is right. Think of how you might help them with kindness, not how you might feel superior by criticizing them. True strength and growth are not achieved by putting others down, but by recognizing and overcoming our own weaknesses. Everyone's journey is different. We waste precious time judging the path and pace of others, when we could instead focus on our own journey and development. Now let us move to the key question. Should we criticize others at all, and if so, how? How did the Stoics approach criticism? According to Stoic philosophy, criticizing others is a natural human impulse. In daily life, we encounter different personalities and behaviors that sometimes trigger disapproval in us. But the Stoics understood something crucial. When and how should criticism be given? If we criticize impulsively at every opportunity, we are merely feeding our ego. The Stoics taught that managing our emotions is essential when offering criticism. If we criticize someone with anger or in a harsh tone, the criticism becomes unhelpful. Instead, it triggers a defensive reaction in the other person and damages the relationship. Epictetus advised, if you wish to change others, first calm yourself and then carefully choose your words. Both Seneca and Marcus Aurelius viewed criticism as a form of service to others. In their view, if we point out someone's mistake, it should be to help them grow, not to shame or belittle them. Wisdom and compassion must be the foundation of this approach. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you seek to correct someone, do so kindly. If you cannot, be patient. Anger and hatred will harm you more than them. When criticizing others, humility is key. It is crucial to remain humble when offering criticism. We should never belittle others, but instead strive to understand their mistakes and offer guidance. We have all made mistakes, and we will continue to do so. The Stoics taught that making mistakes is an essential part of being human. Therefore, when we criticize, we must do so with compassion and understanding. The Stoics viewed criticism as a tool for friendship and support, not for hatred or resentment. If your aim in criticizing someone is simply to make them look bad or to boost your own ego, then you are no longer following the Stoic path. Such criticism will help neither the other person nor your own growth. Furthermore, the Stoics advise that we ask ourselves this simple question before offering criticism. Do I genuinely want to help this person, or do I just want to prove that I am right? This question is vital. If your intention is to help, it will shape the tone and form of your criticism. If your intention is to display superiority, it is wiser to remain silent. Of course, applying these principles in daily life is not always easy. In moments of frustration, emotions can easily take control. But if we remind ourselves that criticism should be offered wisely and compassionately, we can both help others change more effectively and preserve our own inner peace. Remember, a true Stoic does not speak to wound others, but to heal. When offering criticism to those close to us, our words should serve their benefit, not their harm. Criticism should not humiliate or hurt, but rather support and uplift. The Stoics viewed such criticism as an act of service and help. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, when you point out someone's fault, the way you do it matters just as much as the fault itself. This means that the goal of criticism should never be to show that you are right or superior. The goal should be to help the other person grow and improve, and that is only possible through a tone of respect, patience, and kindness. How you say it is everything. The manner of criticism is just as important as its content. For example, the same idea can be expressed in two very different ways. "You did it wrong again." "You always do this." Or, "Perhaps trying a different approach might bring better results. Shall we explore it together?" The second version preserves the relationship and helps the other person feel valued. This is what the Stoics would call respectful criticism. Also, remember, you cannot control others, only your own actions and reactions. That's why it is essential to manage your emotions during criticism. If you criticize while angry or upset, your chances of achieving your goal diminish greatly. As Epictetus said, "It is not what others do that disturbs us, but the meanings and reactions we attach to their actions." Change requires patience. Do not expect the person you criticize to change immediately. Real change takes time. The Stoics understood the complexity of human nature and urged patience. If you consistently offer respectful and sincere criticism, it will bear fruit over time. The golden rule is this: treat criticism the way you would want to receive it. If you hesitate about how to criticize others, just ask yourself one simple question. If this criticism were directed at me, how would I want it to be delivered? This mindset will always guide you toward a more respectful and constructive approach. The timing of criticism is also very important. Criticizing loved ones in public places during moments of anger or in emotional situations can cause harm. Stoic philosophy advises us to choose the right time and place carefully when dealing with others. Moreover, leading by example is often more effective than direct criticism. Sometimes the strongest criticism is simply showing a good example. The Stoics believe that through our behavior and patience, we can inspire change in others. It is equally important to consider whether our loved ones are ready to receive criticism. We must approach with sensitivity and respect their feelings. In every word and interaction, intention must be at the forefront. If your intention is to support and benefit the other person, this will naturally reflect in your tone and manner. On the other hand, if you use criticism to elevate yourself and put others down, it will damage relationships and hinder their growth. A vital principle taught by the Stoics is to understand both our own nature and that of others. Every person has strengths and weaknesses. The wise path is to meet these weaknesses not with hatred, but with understanding. Marcus Aurelius advises us, people will make mistakes. Accept their errors and calmly, consistently show what is right. This is the essence of sensitive and helpful criticism. When approached this way, you preserve relationships, you build trust with others, you create a foundation for real positive change, and you maintain your inner peace and integrity. Remember, the best criticism is by example. If you demonstrate correctness, patience, and understanding through your own actions, those around you will learn from you and become more open to change. For this reason, Stoic philosophy teaches us to think before you criticize, be polite when you do, strengthen relationships after criticism, always keep your intention pure. If we apply these principles in our lives, criticism becomes not a weapon, but a compassionate and constructive tool. This will help protect both our close relationships and our inner harmony.